That scene to me is the greatest part of that whole show.
It's peak. It is peak.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to After Broadway, the podcast where we deep dive into anything and everything musical theater from the comfort of my car. I'm Tara.
I'm Stefania.
And in today's episode, it is the much anticipated episode of Kelly versus Kelly. How many years later? 3? 4?
3 years later.
Can't believe it.
I feel like we have been... I need to come clean. I feel like we've been calling it Kelly v. Kelly.
It's Kelly versus Kelly.
But we saw a pre-talk before the show. They were calling it Kelly versus Kelly. And I'm like, I've been referring to it incorrectly.
The playbill does give us the abbreviation.
It only says a V. It only has a V there.
Kelly versus Kelly had its first, I don't want to say iteration, because the Canadian Music Theatre Project really only showed a very select portion of shows.
It's a workshop. The CMTP was a workshop.
Which, RIP CMTP, I don't think they're doing it anymore because Michael Rubinoff left Sheridan.
Yeah, he resigned from Sheridan, so it's ended, which is a shame because it was wonderful.
Mm-hmm. And Kelly versus Kelly had a workshop there in 2018. And then we interviewed Britta in 2020, like early 2020, like right at the beginning of the pandemic. So like April,
it was like
May,
June. It was
June, somewhere there. And at that point, she had said, which is what she had said in the talk before the show when we saw it last week, that they were just about to go into rehearsal and then everything got shut down. And then I think we learned for the first time last week that she hadn't finished the show when she talked to us about it. It was only finished very, very recently.
I think they were waiting to discover what they had in rehearsals when putting up the show in 2020, when it was originally supposed to play. And that's, I think, not unusual to go into rehearsals with one piece of the show that still needs to be unlocked or completed. But this show had the unique experience of obviously being, or maybe not so unique experience, but I do think it's kind of unique of its production being canceled and then 3 years later being able to pick back up. And during the rehearsal process and the workshopping process before this run at Canadian Stage, they were able to finish the show or finish this iteration of the show. I don't think we'll get to this, but like, I don't think they consider it complete. I think that if they do another production, there would be many a change. If they did another one, there'd be many a change. So, but for this version of the show, it was completed quite recently before it opened.
Yeah, that was something that Britta had said in the talk right before the performance, was that, you know, everyone always asks that question of what are your hopes after this specific run? And everyone's always like, Broadway. And she was like, I want another workshop. I want to see another group of people do this. I want to work on this again, which I feel like is kind of refreshing because not every first piece of art makes it to the biggest stage in the world.
Or is ready for it.
And sometimes you learn that the hard way when things get moved to Broadway and they don't have out of towns and then they close fairly quickly. So not saying that this is like going to Broadway, but it's nice to hear from the composer of this show that like, no, I want another workshop. I want to see other people do this. I want to put it in a different space. I want to open up the door again.
To go back to the drawing board, to edit, to readjust, to shift things around. Because now that you've seen it with an audience, with actors, you have like a fresh perspective on it that you've never had before.
So a note, you can't see this version. Kelly versus Kelly ended, this episode is coming out on June 19th. It ended yesterday. We did not have a lot of time to see this show because we were on vacation. But it was the first thing that we wanted to see when we came back, because obviously we've been talking about this for 3 years. As we just said, this potentially could come up somewhere again because they are going to, I believe, workshop it again. So we'll see what happens there. But
I hope it does. I really hope it gets another production.
Yeah.
And I would see it again in another production.
But before we get too much into this, Kelly versus Kelly is kind of a true life story. It takes place in 1915 of in New York, and it's basically the story of Helen Kelly and her daughter Eugenia Kelly. And Helen takes her daughter to court for going to tango clubs, sneaking out.
For bad behavior, really. For
bad behavior.
For I don't even know, public embarrassment. I don't know exactly what for. It's not a real legal case. Helen Kelly uses her privilege and her connections to bring her daughter to court. She's not actually being tried in a court of law, which comes up a couple times. And also at the end, one of my favorite lines is this is a paraphrase. I can't remember exactly what they said, but it's just like two rich women, entertaining themselves for a day. So yeah, then that's kind of interesting that they used that they're kind of existing in a world that is like so different from most people's world.
The book was written by Sara Farb, who is currently in Harry Potter and the Cursed Child in Toronto. And Britta was saying, which I believe she told us as well when we talked to her a few years ago, that Sara found this piece by looking, I think it was an art podcast that showcased this like scene of Helen and Eugenia Kelly.
So I actually went and listened to the podcast after Britta mentioned it. I think she mentioned to us last time, but after she mentioned it to us at the pre-talk and after I'd seen the show, I wanted more context. And it's actually quite short. It's about 16, 17 minutes. So the podcast itself is called The Memory Palace, and this specific episode is called The Pirate Queen. We'll link this episode of the podcast in our show notes so you can listen to it as well. A couple things struck me about this episode. The first thing that kind of struck me about this episode was the musical only kind of cuts off halfway through the story. So the podcast tells you, okay, after this trial is ended, where they go, what happens next, blah, blah, blah. Spoiler alert for this person's life, for this podcast, Eugenia and Al Davis do get married.
Oh, wow.
And then divorced, but they do get married. So if we ever get to talk to the creative team, I would love to ask, why did you choose to cut the story there? Like, why did you choose that portion of the story to tell? I think that would be like a really interesting question to find out.
I mean, to get into this, we'll get into it a little bit later, but I think it's kind of important to get into it now. This show felt unfinished to us. And I wonder if that cutting it at that point makes it feel a little unfinished. Like, don't get me wrong, we tie up the story like ends. So it's not like it felt like we were completely like left hanging, but it did leave me with more questions than answers, I feel.
Yes, I feel so. The structure is it's framed around this court case, this day in court. And so they spend the whole time in court, and then they flash back to scenes or what happened through testimonies, through witnesses, through just, telling stories. So it's all really, everything we see in the musical happens over the course of one day, barring these flashbacks and flash forwards. So I get that choice to end that story there. What I thought about it was, I think like the first hour.
Sorry,
to
interrupt you for a second. We didn't say this was playing at Canadian Stage, but it is a musical stage company show in collaboration with
it's both
Canadian
of them
Stage.
Together.
Yeah,
and it's part of Britta Johnson. It was part of the Crescendo project.
Yes,
for the Crescendo Series, which is a 3-year commitment by the musical stage company to produce the work of Britta Johnson, and this is her final work as part of the Crescendo Series. Yeah. So the previous ones were Life After, which has obviously had a wonderful life.
It's had American success as well too.
Yeah, multiple success in multiple cities, multiple productions, and then as well Dr. Silver, which I believe only had the one production, and finally Kelly v. Kelly, or Kelly versus Kelly, which we shall see what happens in the future. I see this one having more productions. So, so it's a musical stage company in collaboration with Canadian Stage. It is at the Canadian Stage Berkeley Street Theater, which I had never been inside before.
Either. Beautiful.
It's a great space. It's very wide. I guess you could do lots with that stage space, but it was very blank brick and exposed and industrial. So it was great.
Back to what you were saying, the first hour of the show.
The first hour I thought was really great. I really enjoyed the first hour. And then the ending just wasn't quite locking into place for me. And I don't know what would make it. One thing I thought was, do we need more backstory on the mother? I feel like we get enough from Eugenia Kelly, but from Helen, I don't feel like we get enough from her in this show. And they kept saying, oh, I hope after this is over, you call your mother. It's about, it's a show about a single mother, and her motivation is her love for her daughter and wanting to protect her daughter. But I wasn't quite like walloped emotionally the way I want to
normally
be.
am.
Yeah. I wanted to be walloped emotionally. I wanted to be crying. We actually were sitting right in front of Britta Johnson and Sara Farb watching this. So we were just like,
yeah. They had friends with them.
Yeah.
That was actually the funniest part when the show ended and she was like, I didn't fall asleep. One of the friends was like, okay, well, you know what? A good gauge for
it's a great
keeping
gauge.
Interest.
Great.
I agree. I honestly think, and I think we kind of briefly talked about this after we saw it, my biggest problem with the show was the lack of connection between Helen and Eugenia. And whether that existed in real life or not, I needed more from each of them individually if they weren't going to sing something together, which I also think there should have been a song together. But like really thinking about it, like breaking it down, the only time that we get a sense of like how she feels about her is when Helen is singing about her as a kid and we have Eugenia like running around the stage, like growing up with her. And then the other times we don't really spend a lot of time with each other. So like Eugenia talks about a lot how she almost feels like she was kind of like trapped in that house. She always had to play that card game with her mother, but I didn't see any of that or hear any of that. You see them play cards like one time, but the rest, like, girl is living in New York City, like with her friends. So I just feel like we were lacking a mother-daughter connection, because I agree when Britta said at the beginning that like, you're going to want to talk to your mom. I'm like, I didn't feel anything, and I should have.
Yeah, I wanted a bit more. I'm wondering if, they needed to sing together, if they needed to have more scenes together. I think you're kind of stuck because of the framing device is the trial, and they're very separate. They're not seeing eye to eye. So should they be singing together if they're feeling very different, if they're not connecting in that way? But maybe maybe this is too cheesy or something, but maybe there can be a song where they're both kind of singing similar lyrics and applying it, and it applies to both of their lives. Just something where we as the audience see, even if the characters themselves don't see, but we as the audience see that they are more similar than different, or they understand each other better than they think they do.
Yeah.
Something to show that like there is this, like, we understand that there's love, but we need to, like, you really need to spell out the kind of love that they have for each other.
And also, to your point earlier of, like, we need a little more backstory on Helen. We get scenes of her with Mr. Kelly, whatever his name is. I don't even remember his name.
Edward
Kelly. But barely you see that he is in it for money more than he is for love.
Connections.
We kind of get her teaching that to Eugenia. I don't know. I just feel like there was something missing, and I don't know if it's a song or if it honestly might have just been like more scene work, because as this went along,
it's really short.
Yeah, there's like not a lot of scene work that happens here.
It's about,
which is interesting.
It was about 85 minutes, so really short, which I love that.
Yes, but also at the same
time, but they had room for more.
Sometimes you need an intermission to help with like pacing of a show and like diving more into these characters. I wanted more for the characters, I feel. And like as a general blanket statement, like everybody, even the friends, like the cop, like everyone needed a little bit like more to their storyline. Let's talk about performances. So let's start with Helen. Helen Kelly, played by Jessica Sherman, who we actually saw in the Toronto production of Dear Evan Hansen. She played Heidi Hansen.
A mom. She's a mom.
She's a mom through and through.
She's playing moms.
I saw the other day Kelsey Verzati, who also past guest and friend of this podcast. She was doing the musical stage company Instagram takeover, and Jessica Sherman wears like a donut. You know the like old like donuts that
Oh,
you have
yes.
for the buns? Like that's what she's using
Wow.
for her bun in this.
She
in
had a
this
very
show.
severe hairstyle.
Very severe.
Very severe. Yeah, there's not a lot of costume changes. And maybe if we'd seen the mom, she only puts the flower in and out. Maybe if we'd seen the mom look a little
her hair
softer
down.
at certain points.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, like the severity of her hairstyle and her clothing sends a message.
Mm-hmm.
But when she's wearing those clothes for even 19-year-olds, Helen,
Yeah.
I
No,
want to
it's
see
true.
the journey that she's taken from 19-year-old Helen to 40-whatever-year-old Helen.
Sometimes you can suspend your disbelief, and sometimes you're like, I need a costume change. Like that's really
or
what it comes
something,
down to.
a little something.
Yeah. I mean, for the performance or the character that it is, I think she gave a good performance. She's really singing like top belt a lot of this show, which is kind of crazy because there's a lot of songs. But yeah, she was good when we saw her in Dear Evan Hansen too. So
She's great. She has a
good.
quality to her voice. It's not. It's like has a little rasp almost.
She's also like a cry to it, which I think is good for this character specifically, and also Heidi, because like those are the kind of songs that you sing. And then Eugenia, played by Ava Foote, who I am not familiar with.
No, I've never seen her in anything before.
at all. Gorgeous voice. She sounded so good. I did like her costumes, which was kind of like you wanted to see Helen look like Eugenia. At certain points to see like the free flow of life, because there's like a moment very late in the show when Helen is talking to someone about love. It's like the guy that's playing Al Davis, but it's not supposed to be Al Davis, and I'm like, oh, so she did like live a life, we just never get to see it.
Yeah, I don't know if she did. There's that moment where she's like getting engaged to Edward Kelly and she's being called to, marrying Edward Kelly is what she's been raised to do. It's her responsibility. It's her duty to do that. But she's being called to this other life. This,
as they sing, you are chosen.
You are. It's what? Not a blessing to be.
It's
is
a
it
privilege
blessing?
to be chosen.
It's a privilege to be chosen. You know, like I joke sometimes when my friends get engaged. I'm like, chosen by a man. So I saw myself.
You really related.
I really related to that. All my friends' husbands are wonderful. But I like to joke. I like to be funny. It's a privilege to be chosen. Yeah, so that's what she's been raised to do, to marry this upstanding man. Edward Kelly is older than her. It's kind of seen as a foregone conclusion that if he asks her to marry him, she'll say yes. Yeah. But yeah, she's being called by this potential other life, by romance, by adventure. And it's kind of clever to have the personification of that be the same actor who plays Al Davis, who's the person who is calling Eugenia to that lifestyle as well.
Some other performances, we'll get to like our fave in a second, but let's shout out the three girls, because they're kind of playing the like inner thoughts of both Helen and Eugenia. Julia McLennan, Kelsey Verzati, and Margaret Thompson. Julia actually just announced standby in the Toronto production of Six, which is very exciting. So congrats to Julia. The vocal performance that these three gave, I'm still thinking about it.
The 3-part harmony.
Oh my God.
Harmony. There's a couple clips that they've posted in like
on TikTok.
The parking garage.
Gorgeous. I'll put them in the episode.
Beautiful. Sounding so beautiful. Yeah, they all sound amazing. Even when each of them have individual moments, sound great, but they're truly, truly shining when the three of them are singing together.
And also, that's a testament to Britta's score here, because I've heard many people say it's, again, to use the word privilege, but it's a privilege to sing a Britta Johnson score. This one is so interesting. We'll talk more about the music after we get through the performances, but there's a lot of like minor notes in there. A lot of it sounds like very haunting, which I think is so beautiful. And especially when the girls sing their 3-part harmony, they're doing it like in a way that I've never heard before. And it's truly like gorgeous. Like I need a cast recording just to listen to the three of them.
I think the song where it's used most effectively is our favorite song.
Not called Eugenia at the Tango Club
Not
anymore.
called Eugenia, but it's called Al's Song in the program. You know, whenever a musical goes through a journey of development, you get worried that songs are removed. And when Musical Stage Company had released that YouTube clip 3 years ago.
Oh my God, of Haley Gillis.
Obsessed. We're obsessed.
Kelsey was in that video. Margaret was also in that video, but Julia was not.
Yes,
it was someone
Kaylee
else that we've seen.
It was Kaylee Harwood in that video, who's not in this production. Yeah, casting changed over the 3 years. Many things changed.
But do you remember the moment in 2020 when we told Britta about this and she was like, Eugenia doesn't even sing that part. And we were like, oh my God, who sings it?
We were like, who sings it? I was talking to my mom that the other day. She's like, the man sings it. I was like, you're right. The man does sing it. But that didn't even occur to me, to be honest.
Me either.
But
the man that sings it is Jeremy Walmsley, who plays Al Davis. That scene to me is the greatest part of that whole show.
It's peak. It is peak.
It's quite early.
Yeah, I would say it's like a third of the way through. Third of the way through.
Song 1, 2, 3, 4, song 5.
Yeah. And also, I think they hold Jeremy Walmsley, who plays Al Davis, back. He's not in the show until you meet Al Davis.
Yeah.
So you, like Eugenia, are like, who's this? Who's this man?
And then you hear that like minor like cello chord, which kind of becomes a theme of the like dun, 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 and then he starts with the like "Do not be afraid, dancing is just feeling." I'm like, oh my God.
And they're like tangoing around the stage, and then people
sexy. It's like it's so good. It's so good.
People are tangoing around them, but it's almost like modern interpretations of tango. It's a suggestion of tango around them. It's not a formal strict tango. It's just like a little a hint of tango.
The girls are still singing in the background of this as well.
And we have our ensemble of 2 men.
Peter Fernandez, who friend of the podcast, Jenny, who we've talked to, her husband, and Dave Ball, who are playing like, well, Peter is playing the detective, but also like tango dancer. And Dave Ball is playing like many characters. Yeah.
They pop in and out. They're just used in an ensemble way. So they're all kind of dancing in that moment. That song, she's Al Davis is singing her, like convincing her to stay, convincing her to like not worry. And then the girls are, being like her inner thoughts.
Your mother will be worried.
Her inner thoughts are probably taking the voice of her mother in her head, being like, don't do this. What is this? And it works so well because it comes up again and again and again, the 3 of them singing, and they're what she's thinking, or what her conscience, if you will.
Yeah, it's so good. But truly, star of this... Oh, sorry, one more. Mike Jackson plays the judge and Edward Kelly. And then, to me, the star of this production is Joel Cumber.
So true. So true. Comedy.
He's playing the lawyer.
His cousin is a woman. That was funny.
From the first moment that Joel walks on stage, he gives the audience a look and you're like, okay, I understand the characterization and we're along for the 90-minute journey. And he never misses a beat. He is on it 90 minutes straight.
Some might say too much, but not me.
No.
I wouldn't say that. Some might say, but it wasn't me.
We've seen Joel, like, actually, the first time we met Joel was, do you remember the first time we met Joel?
I didn't know that was him, but you told me it was him. Like a couple years ago.
We saw the like salute or whatever to Steven Schwartz. And he was sitting in front of us with like a couple other Sheridan grads.
Because so in that class, that Sheridan class with Kelsey, with past guests of the podcast like Georgia and Alex and Jared is your friend Jared, who you went to high school with.
Yeah.
So that's
I
kind of like...
remember sending him a picture being like, we're sitting with your Sheridan classmates, and I just remember all 6 of us collectively losing our minds at Carrie Manalako's The Wizard and I.
It was so much fun.
If we ever spoke to him, I would tell him about that moment because we've never heard it better than that, and we all lost our minds together. It's so true. Yeah, because I remember them like turning around to look at us and be like, "Did you just hear that?"
It's so true. If I recall, there was an intermission, and they were not sitting there before intermission. They were like sitting high up, and they were like, "We saw these 3 empty seats. We came during intermission." Yeah, I remember. I don't think we've met him since.
No, we've seen him in many a YouTube video because he lives with Kelsey and he lived with Georgia, so that's how we like know of him. He's a Toronto
Theater
ensemble mainstay, and I'm thrilled that we got to see him like perform because he was performing. It was iconic. I think I said to you,
should we have him on? Like, should we send him an Instagram DM? Let's send an Instagram DM.
I said to you when we got into the car, like, Joel Cumber coming for that Dora award. Because truly he is.
He's great in this. He's so
funny. Good. So good. And kind of like, not the narrator, but almost like the narrator of this story, because he's giving us all of the information from the court case. He's representing Helen Kelly.
A lot of exposition.
And then he takes it very far at the end.
A lot of exposition. What's the song called? Women or A Man's Role? Something like that. I don't have my program with me.
It's called... Oh, I don't know what it's called. Oh, sung by... No, not Chosen. Eugenia Shamed, maybe?
Maybe. But yeah, they sing the song about how a woman should be and the expectations of them. And it sounds kind of dark, but it was actually very funny because it's so... Especially looking at it through a modern lens, which is kind of hard. It's hard to put like modern lens and modern perspectives on period pieces because you don't know... Not you don't know, but just the thought process and the constraints that they were living in are so different. But through the modern lens that we have, just the absurd things that the expectations are of women that they're stating turns it into a comedy song, even though they're being deathly serious.
Yeah, like, I love women. My cousin's a woman.
My cousin is a woman. My cousin.
Deadpan to the audience. What a laugh. Yeah, let's talk about the music a little bit more. I think the instrumental of this show is so beautiful, and I think we thought this before we even saw it, just based on that one clip of that like, one song.
Am I making it up? Is it like an upright bass? Like,
or maybe.
That's what I'm hearing, but I'm not musical. But that's what I keep hearing.
I thought it was a cello, but maybe it is I guess it is a bass
like,
cello.
Boom, like, because it's like plucked, not like...
Yeah.
But what do I know? I know nothing. It sounds like an upright bass.
No, but it's so prominent in that entire score,
and it
which
has,
is
like,
great.
Such gravity.
Mm-hmm. Other than obviously Al's song, and then when I do love when Al's song, the reprise happens and Eugenia sings it, as we're like reflecting on everything that happened in her night out. Also funny to me, this is a side note, but like when they go to the tango club, you have to pay to dance. So they're paying like, what was it? I think the going 25. Rate was like a nickel or, 25 cents for him. But for other people, it was like a nickel.
Yeah, or like a dime or something. Yeah.
And then obviously Eugenia has money and she pulls out her dollar and his eyes go $sign because he's never seen someone come with a dollar.
Yeah.
That's
so his target. To me. That's his target now.
But other than that song, Chosen, beautiful, sung by Helen, but then also the girls singing It's a Privilege to Be Chosen. That's the one that's on TikTok. I will put that in this episode. They're like background amazing. There is a little clip of Love and Money on Musical Stage Company's YouTube page. Britta is playing it. I'm trying to think what else. The song that she sings, which I think is the one that Britta says is her favorite in the show, is For a Moment, when they kind of like go, it's Eugenia with her friends, and they're standing outside the tango club, and they sing about what would happen if they didn't go in. Right. And I thought it was a nice moment, but I don't know that it was quite earned for me.
Yeah, it is nice. I think they're really trying to get what they really connected to in the show, and maybe I'm wrong, but what I see them connected to in the show is like female relationships. So whether that's a mother and daughter or with their friends. And I feel like they wanted to bring the friends kind of full circle in that moment there. I think it's like half an idea and it needs to be like fully fleshed out in some way. Maybe that's more book scene. Maybe it's just a little more of a song or something. But yeah, it's like halfway there almost to me.
No, I agree. And then also just a shout out for music, because Britta shouted her out as well. Lynn Schenkel is the music supervisor / orchestrator, and the orchestrations are really beautiful.
How
really
big
beautiful.
is the band? How big is the band? How many people?
I'm trying to find the band members. it looked quite small to me.
Yeah. 5 or 6 maybe. That's my guess.
So there's woodwinds. There's a violin, mandolin. Oh, I think we're going to find
5.
out if it's a bass. We have an accordion / viola and a bass.
A bass. Wow, maybe I am musical. So 5 band members.
Oh my God, and the bass member in 2019 became a sub for Mervish Productions' smash hit Come From Away.
Wow. Exciting.
You know what? We never give credit to the band, and maybe we should.
No, we should be giving credit. The band is great. I love when you can see the band because of the way that this stage is set up. The band is off to the side. There's no orchestra pit here.
Are we wearing hats, or am I making that up?
I have no idea. That did not.
We just watched a performance of New York, and they were wearing hats. So
were they? I did not notice that. Maybe I should be looking at the band. I should be giving more credit to the band. Eyes on the band.
Well, it's interesting not to make this about New York, but there was that whole union issue with Here Lies Love, and they now have added musicians to that
12
show.
of them.
12 of them, I know. Well,
crazy.
because of the capacities of the Broadway theater. I would actually be very interested to know if there are any musicians that are listening to us. We have found out through this kind of union issue with Here Lies Love that every Broadway theater has a set number of musicians. Minimum. I want to know.
And they can petition to make it different, but
yeah. I want to know in Toronto, what I would assume the Mervish theaters have higher. But this theater, the Berkeley Theater, is teeny tiny. So, and there's only 5 people here. So maybe that is their minimum. I don't know. I wonder if the rules are the same in Canada. I feel like they're not, but.
Yeah, I don't know. I really am very curious about this Here Lies Love situation because one, plays don't often have live music. So why doesn't it apply to plays as well? I understand why it doesn't, but also I don't understand why it doesn't. And number 2, now this orchestrator has to orchestrate. It opens in 2 weeks, or it starts previews in really soon.
I know.
So when are they doing that? Crazy. Number 3. I actually have 3 things. The third thing is I always love hearing live music. I love seeing live music played. But I was kind of excited that such a different musical style was going to be represented in Here Lies Love, and something that is so electronic. And I think I understand why unions exist, but I think being so rigid in this discourages different styles of music in some ways. That's not fully formed, but I think I understand. Can this music can the music as it was intended be created by a band live, or will it have to go through filters? Is it electronic or is it I don't know. So
or synthesizers, what's the deal here?
Yeah, so I'm very curious.
Yeah. That also made me think of just thinking of the band in general. When we saw Bad Hat's Alice, there was no band, but all those people played their own instruments. They were
the band. I believe the 12-person band in Here Lies Love is 3 actor musicians and then 9 regular musicians. Oh. So actor musicians count as well.
Interesting.
So anyway, so for Alice, they would count as well. We don't know anything. I don't know.
Kelly v. Kelly band made me think about the band because I feel like we don't talk about the band enough.
We never talk about it enough. Yeah, I agree.
That was great. And this music, I think, I don't know, it's very rare that we get any sort of cast recording from small productions here. But
especially because it's the first production. I think they'll want to wait until it's workshopped a bit more and they have another production to do a cast recording. That would be my thought.
Although, shout out to Musical Stage Company because they're always putting stuff on YouTube, and we're very thankful for that. Because
yes, it gets
we do get to hear bits and pieces, which is very exciting.
It gets 200 views, but I'm there.
That's fine.
I'm a view.
Yeah. And also, they just put out that trailer recently on the Instagram page for Kelly v. Kelly. I don't know. I'm excited for this show to have more of a life. You had said that you would see it again and you think it would be beneficial for a second viewing. I would only see it again after another workshop, I feel.
That's fair. But when we were leaving, I was like, oh, I would send someone to see this. I think this is interesting. I think it's doing something. I think it's... I love an original Canadian musical. It gets me excited. It gets me hyped.
No, agree.
And I think I haven't seen anything quite like this before.
The story is very interesting. So it's like to pick that out and make a musical about it is great. I almost want something else that I want more of is the like tango pirate aspect of it. Give me a song about the pirates. Like I want to know about the Al Davises and their lifestyles because it turns out that he's kind of a terrible person.
This was actually something funny now that we're talking about Al Davis. We're watching this show, the actor Jeremy Walmsley. I'm like, I've seen this man in something before. What is it? And it came to me. I didn't even look at my program. I knew he was in the Drayton production of Ghost that we saw. I can't remember his character's name, but he was like the friend whose fault it is. He's like the Tony Goldwyn character. It was a misunderstanding. I was like, where have I seen this man's face? This was like 5+ years ago. This was pre-podcast we saw this. It was so long ago.
Never forget.
Sniped it.
Do you have anything else to say on Kelly v. Kelly?
I don't have anything else to say. Just I guess my final thoughts are I really wanted to love this show, and I think I'm like almost there. Like I said, I think that first hour is so great, and I think the ending just doesn't feel like it's tied up, and maybe that's intentional, and normally I love an ambiguous ending, but I think it just didn't quite nail the landing in the way that I wanted it to. But I also, that kind of excites me because then there's room for other productions to tweak things and make them even better. So I would love to see another production of this show. And should we rate them? We're going to rate it out of 10, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, out of 10. I was ready to go out of 5, but I forgot that we made this rule out of 10.
We made it out of 9 out of 10. I'm going to go 7 out of 10 Tango Pirates.
Amazing. I'm going to go 6 out of 10. You know the like dancer emoji girl? Her.
Sure.
The tango dancer emoji girl.
Yeah. In the red dress.
Yeah. Agree. Again, I think the music of this show is truly phenomenal. Like some of Britta's best stuff that she's put out there, because it's so different from anything I've ever heard before. And I would really love to hear almost more. Like it almost felt too short. I feel like we're always asking for shorter shows, and this one felt a little too short. But as we said walking out of the theater, and I will say it here, what a talented cast. Like every single person in that cast sounded phenomenal. So it's always exciting when we see Canadian shows and the talent is like outrageous. Before we move on to Obsessions, I just want to pull up because I have the program here, and it's the Canadian stage upcoming season. And exciting. The first thing here, Top Dog Underdog just won a Tony for Best Revival. Revival? Play? Revival.
Was it a revival? Was it an original play?
Well, Leopoldstadt won play, so...
Leopoldstadt was an original play? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Or for some reason I thought that was the revival. But I know nothing.
But let's confirm that, because I'm pretty sure Revival happened before Best Play, in terms of... The Tonys were last night.
I agree. Leopoldstadt was new. I don't know. It just has like an old name, so I thought it was. Yeah. So I thought it was old, but
other standout plays on this list: the Lehman trilogy. They're getting some like big names here, like big name players.
Yeah.
And then The Inheritance. So that is a big show. I also saw today that A Midsummer Night's Dream is the Shakespeare in the Park this summer, which starts in July and runs till.
September usually? Labor Day?
End of September, maybe first week of October. No, I think it might be a little later this year.
But it's outside, so Canadian weather is very, very temperamental. I really think it's mid-September.
Mid to end of July this year, which feels a little bit late. But I also want to say that it's their...
Yeah, it's 40th anniversary.
40th anniversary of Shakespeare in the Park, yes. We've seen Midsummer, but I loved Midsummer.
No, that was my favorite one we've ever seen. So it's July 21st to September 3rd. July 21st to September 3rd.
Oh, great. Labor Day weekend. So we will be there at some point because we're always there. So excited to see Shakespeare in the Park. And then on the back of this, it's the musical stage company upcoming, which is Uncovered Fleetwood Mac and the Eagles.
Can't wait.
That's a good one. Finally, Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812, which is
actually
very, very exciting. Haley Gillis is the photo in this, so we'll see what happens. Because we love Haley. And then I think it's their New York's Festival. So there's some good stuff coming to Canadian Stage and Musical Stage Company. Oh, wow. There's like a little ad here for Blackout. Brandon Antonio featured in many pictures here.
Yeah, it has like 20 years of musical stage and just all different things. But yeah, Blackout's
their 20
twice.
years and we've only been like, I'll use the word subscribed, even though we're not subscribed, but like subscribed for only a few years now. We really weren't doing our best before the podcast started, and now we're working hard.
No, it's, I'm so grateful to the podcast because it's exposed us to so many theater companies and shows that I wasn't familiar with before, and I've seen so much more than I ever could have even expected, and only to go up and up. And I also had the opportunity to see more than I've ever had before, whether that's through gifted tickets or press tickets or, I don't know, anything. It's been really exciting.
Mm-hmm. And we have an exciting summer coming up because we're heading to Stratford next month. So very excited for that. And there will be corresponding episodes. Yeah. But until then, it's now time for our obsession of the week.
Okay, so my obsession this week. So speaking of upcoming seasons, as someone who has purchased tickets from many a theater company before, when they do that, they get your address, and then they like to mail you some things. And so I have all my upcoming season theater mail to show you. So here's Canadian Stage, like we just talked about, 23-24 season. Here's National Ballet of Canada, right there.
Isn't there an opera on right now that's supposed to be phenomenal?
I don't know.
I'm going to look this up while you're talking.
Okay, you look it up. I also have the Stratford magazine. This is a long magazine, actually. Like, it's big. It has all the stuff in there. My brother has actually been to Stratford. He saw Spamalot and Rent already, and he gave me the review. So, Stratford. And then I was opening it. I was like, do you see this person? Did you see this person? Did you see our friend Robert?
Wait, let me see. I missed it.
Oh, I didn't. I was pointing to a random page.
Okay, great. Never mind.
But let's see if I can find him now. There's like a Rent photo. I was like, did you see Robert? He was like, you know who was really good? Guinevere in Spamalot.
Spamalot?
I was like,
Jennifer Shaw.
Her husband was on our show.
Who's pregnant? Congratulations
I know.
to them.
And we'll probably talk about it when we see Spamalot. But I think it's fantastic that they are allowing her to do the show for as long as she feels
she's able to.
She's
amazing.
Able to do it.
We love that.
So we absolutely love that. Here's Robert.
This is really video only. I am obsessed.
This is good.
I'm obsessed with this photo shoot. Stratford, thank you.
Art. Good key art. Yes.
Obsessed. Can't wait.
Do they have the photo credit on here? I don't know.
Oh, the photographer, whoever it is, give them a raise.
I don't see the photo credit on here, but
Stratford is always doing fun stuff with their playbills, but when that spread came out,
it's good.
Obsessed.
No, the playbills last year were ugly. Sorry, it was just like red with Chicago on it. It was ugly.
Oh, that one, but the Billy Elliot one was good, and so
yeah, it
was
has a good picture. The Little Shop one.
Little Shop. Yeah.
Okay, and then we got my favorite press mailer. So for the Grand Theater, they're doing Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So they mailed everyone a golden ticket.
Oh my god!
It's a golden ticket. I was so excited when I got this.
Wow, I just said congrats to Stratford, but like truly congrats to the Grand.
Congrats to the Grand. And they have really wonderful things coming this season. Kim's Convenience, Charlie and Chocolate Factory, obviously.
Kim's Convenience?
Clue, yeah, Kim's Convenience. And I think for the first time, the writer is starring in it.
Amazing.
So that's fantastic. Who? Ins Choi?
Oh, yeah, I know the name.
Yeah, so really, really fun, exciting stuff coming up, but truly the golden ticket, so good.
That's so amazing.
So, we
dependent on life, we might go see that because we might know someone in that. But
in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory?
That's a TBD. That's a TBD. I know it's coming like Christmas time.
Yeah, it's a seasonal show. That's a great. It's a great show for Christmas, for kids, for gifts for people. So yeah, a fantastic mailer. All these are good, but the best one,
the golden ticket.
The golden ticket for me. And we've all got exciting shows coming up for everything. This one is for like the June at the National Ballet, and they have Frame by Frame that just ended, and Romeo and Juliet is coming up. And they're bringing in Sarah Mearns from New York City Ballet to do performances with Guillaume Cote, and I'd love to go see it. I don't know if it's going to work out because I don't have time, but I would
Wait, we were
recommend.
talking about this is really going to be like name droppy of me, but we were talking about this at Opera Garnier in Paris.
We were.
Because there were costumes there from
and they
previous
do the
ballets.
ballet at the Opera Garnier. Yes, Romeo and Juliet, I love the production that National Ballet of Canada does, and I would really recommend it to anyone. But this production of Romeo and Juliet runs till June 25th, and what I would recommend is standing room tickets. They're $12. You have to get there when the box office opens, but $12 on like Ring 3 cannot be beat.
You have a week to see it, everybody, if you're listening on episode release day. I can't find exactly what I was thinking of, but look out for, if you're interested in the opera, the Canadian Opera Company, because I'm pretty sure there's like a very innovative show taking place currently.
Okay. Should we go?
We've never been to the opera.
I know.
Love OM's coming. We almost saw Love OM in France, but we didn't.
The weather was too good. The weather ended up being too good.
Yeah. But that would have been an experience.
Shara made me
not
laugh.
that
She's like, but it's in French, isn't it? And I was like, I think it's always in French.
Yeah,
Every time Love OM is done, it's in French.
Every time.
So it would make no difference if we saw it in Canada.
My obsession is not anything to do with France, but just to talk about a couple of things because it was a little theatery. We did go, we did a walking tour. We went to the Moulin Rouge, which was very fun. We did not go because the tickets are so expensive. But to go up just to the box office area and see the artwork was really great. Also, they're obviously doing very well because everyone seems to be going to the Moulin Rouge. So, if you can drop a hefty price tag ticket, go see it if you're out there.
So expensive. It is
so expensive. And also, going to Opera Garnier to see, Box 5 was very thrilling for me, specifically, of the Phantom of the Opera. But just to see, the way that the Broadway stages model their chandeliers off of those chandeliers is actually incredible what the set designers can do. Because it was, to the T, perfect, looked exactly like the chandelier. That theater is gorgeous. So if anyone is ever listening to us in Europe and you have the chance to see a ballet or an opera there, go.
What was running while we were there in Paris was a ballet based on Dante's Inferno, but it was sold out even before I looked. So it was in high demand. Otherwise, I would have been like, hey.
We're going to the ballet.
Hey, guys.
We're doing fun. There was a brief second here when I was like, wow, should my obsession be ready for the ride? But no, and we're not even going to go into
We can't go into it.
Incredible Disneyland Paris parade. Maybe we'll get into it when it closes in September. So someone remind us in a few months from now. But my obsession this week, last night, this is on episode record, was the Tony Awards. And I feel like no real surprises. I think we did a pretty good job in our predictions this year. Kimberly and Kimbo cleaned up as we thought they would. Surprising to me because we weren't really looking at the play categories, but Leopoldstadt cleaned up. And I always think of that show because it was the show that never came here because of the pandemic.
Right.
And then a year later has had
Broadway.
such success on Broadway. Congrats to our favorite, Brandon Uranowitz, for finally winning a Tony Award. His speech was lovely. But my obsession this week is the song from Shucked, which is Somebody Will. I loved Shuck's performance on the Tony Awards. I thought it was very smart to do a medley. If you're trying to sell tickets to your show, I think it's a really good idea to show different moments from the show. And they very briefly showed Somebody Will. This song is a country anthem. It is sung so well. It is such a good song. I think I messaged you after I saw it being like, this song has no right to be as good as it is. And then one of my favorite parts of Shucked is there's a wedding that happens. I'm not going to say between who because that's a big spoiler. But all of the men get drunk. And as they're drinking, this song comes on, and the character that sings it is like, oh my God, that's my song. I love this song. And it's a true comedy moment. I think about it all the time. And it is my most played song from Shucked next to Alex's Independently Owned. So
Tony Award winner Alex Newell.
Tony Award winner. Tony's made history last night. 2 non-binary actors One, I think it really opens up the conversation, which we will not open up this can of worms right now, of should the Tonys have genderless categories.
We need more time for that. We need time.
I feel like we are heading into that for potentially next season. Maybe it will be something that we talk about next year. But it was actually a really good Tonys. It was some of the highest views that they've had in years. And it was unscripted. The writers are on strike. I feel like the last time we talked about this, I like recorded an insert to say that the Tonys weren't happening. Surprise, they happened. Unscripted. But I hope that people don't take how fun yesterday was to be like, well, we don't need the writers after all. So I hope that there is a balance in the future, and we'll see what happens for like award shows in the future for TV, film, everything, because it's a crazy time. The actors may be going on strike soon too.
If we want more art, it needs to be written by somebody. And that's that. So.
And pay them.
And they need to be paid to do it. They need to be paid fairly to do it.
Yeah.
They need to be able to support themselves. Okay.
Exactly. So that is my obsession of the week. That's also our thoughts on Kelly versus Kelly. As we said, Kelly versus Kelly is over now in Toronto, but keep an eye out, keep an ear out. There possibly could be another production in the future. And if it does roll back through the city or somewhere else, go see it. Because British shows seem to travel and end up here, there, and everywhere. So it would be exciting if it had an out of town in the States, maybe. I would love to, like, I don't know. Sometimes I think of these Canadian shows, I'm like, what if, like, a dramaturg was in on this? And, like, what would they do? I always wonder.
We didn't talk about this, but the reviews for the show in Toronto have been really great. They've been really great.
Outstanding.
They've been really great. So I see momentum for it.
Literally on the playbill, it says Britta Johnson is Canadian musical theater's next great hope. Toronto Star. And you know
that was pre-Kelly v. Kelly said. But, yeah, the reviews for this specific show have been really wonderful.
If you're not locked out of Globe and Mail, read theirs because it's really good.
I agree.
And the Broadway, there's like a Broadway World Board section for Toronto that has all of the reviews of Kelly v. Kelly.
Oh, like aggregated? Great.
Read those as well. But yeah, also excited to see what Britta does next. I feel like we said that after we talked to her. And now...
This made it more
now
exciting.
Seeing what she did next, I really want to see the next project.
Yes.
So yeah, that's our episode this week. If you want to listen to any of our other episodes, you can do that by subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube, and we'd really appreciate it if you left us a comment and subscribed.
And you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Off to Be Away Podcast with the number 2.
And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.